Namaste, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining CoHNA Dialogues today. My name is Sudha Jagannathan. I'm on the board of Coalition of Hindus of North America. And today I have with me a panel to talk about a very important topic happening in California. But it's not just a California problem, it's also in Canada. So that's why we have members from our Canada team here. With that, we have Rishabh Sarswat, who is the president of CoHNA Canada. We have Ashwin Arab, who is our managing director of our Youth Action Network. And we have our guest, Joe Adam George. And I'm going to introduce Joe. He's a research lead at the Middle East Forum, and he's a foreign policy and national security analyst with the McDonald-Laurier Institute. He has been an intern at Hudson Institute, and he is here to talk about a problem in Canada that we are seeing in California. We'll get into it a little bit more. But he's just published a great article, which I will post in the chat, and I would like everybody to download it and keep it, read it, and send it to your assembly members in California, because they need to read too. So with that, let me just put a framework around our topic today. We are going to be talking about SB 509, a bill in California legislature right now. It is called Transnational Repression Training Services. So the bill is aiming to train law enforcement in California on transnational repression. And sounds pretty good, right? You don't want a transnational repression anywhere by anybody on anyone else. But the problem here is the Hindus like us, we are opposing the bill. And why are we opposing this bill? Because you have to look at who's behind it and what is the motivation in this bill. Last year, a similar bill was brought by Assemblywoman Jasmeet Bains, who is also the co-sponsor of the Senate bill right now. And last year, CoHNA was one of the biggest opponents, along with other Hindu organizations, and the bill stalled in committee. So this year, Assemblywoman Jasmeet Bains, being a co-sponsor, is actually having this bill led by Senate leader Ana Caballero, who's the chair of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. And the bill passed the Senate committees and Senate itself unanimously. In the Senate, the full Senate, there were two people who abstained because they were not in the committee at that time. But really, it's passing unanimously. And it's right now in the Assembly, and it is in a committee called the Emergency Management Committee, and it's going to be heard on June 30th. And this is very critical for us, that date, because we want all Californians to send messages to their representatives in the Assembly saying, we want you to vote no on the bill. You should ask, you should send the, I'm going to post a couple of links in the chat again. CoHNA and HAF has independent campaigns that enable you to do one click and send a message. But then beyond that, we want you to pick up the phone, call your assembly member. Then I'm going to post a few names and telephone numbers of the committee members that will hear this bill next week. And I want you to call them and say, I want you to vote no. So why are we opposing the bill? So first, I would say there is no Hindu voice in this bill. And when we talk to assembly and senators, they say, why are you worried? This bill is about China and Cambodia. Well, if it is China and Cambodia, why isn't the AAPI, other leaders, caucus leaders sponsoring it? No, it is just Assemblywoman Jasmeet Bains co-sponsoring this with Ana Caballero, along with one other assembly member. No Chinese, no Cambodian, and no Russian, no Iranians here, okay? So the other thing is, even though we were one of the biggest opponents of the Assemblywoman Jasmeet Bains' bill last year, this year when they were drafting the bill, nobody from the legislature reached out and said, hey, you guys opposed last year. We want to hear your concerns. No, they don't want to hear have any input from their constituents because they are actually pandering to someone else. And so the problem in the bill is very cleverly worded. There's no mention of India, Hindu or Khalistani or anything, nothing, very clean bill. But there are the terms thrown in there are very vague. Terms like proxies, dissidents, no definition of what those are and who defines it, no. And then there is another element to this bill where California state is wanting to override Interpol designation of global terrorists. I mean, that is really crazy. They want to provide sanctuary for those terrorists in California. And so that is beyond actually the right or the, responsibilities of a state legislature, but they are asking for it. Then the other thing is, we asked everybody, we met with a lot of committee members in the Senate, and now we are meeting the Assembly. So we said, do you know temples are being attacked? And they said, what temples? Hindu temples. No, we didn't know anything. Okay, did you know that temples in Sacramento and Los Angeles have been attacked? And it's by the same people, because you can look at the graffiti, sometimes the videos of who's doing it, it's the same messages. Apparently, it's a group of people who have grievances against the country of India, but they're taking it out on Hindu temples. And the problem is, the vandalism has been reported to law enforcement. No action has been taken. Actually, the problem is so bad across the country and in Canada. Across the country, it's so bad. A group of Indian American Congress members wrote to the Department of Justice and said, we want you to look into this and report back. Now, we don't know if they have reported back because nobody has shared anything with us. So we feel that we have been completely bypassed, disregarded. Our voices are not represented in a bill of this nature that really has a huge impact on us living in California. And if it passes in California, anything that happens in California spreads like wildfire across the nation. And this could be a major problem for United States. And that's why we have guests here from Canada to talk about what is it that we have to watch out for. One other thing I will mention is, in good faith, CoHNA and Hindu American Foundation proposed some amendments, very strong, good amendments, to include transnational organizations, international crime syndicates into this. We reviewed it with the staffers for the author. None of it made into the final version. So this is very confusing. But at the same time, we found that an organization called Sikh American SOLDEF, Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund, has been a partner in drafting this whole thing, because they are quoted quite a bit in the analysis that a committee looks at. In one of the comments there, SOLDEF is saying the California high-tech companies are fostering transnational repressors. So any tech people here, we have some on this panel too. If you're working for a tech company, you have to know California is now saying you are promoting transnational repression, or you yourself are a TNR actor. How would you like that, right? So we are opposing this very, very strongly. And this is happening in a background of rising hostility in California. The California Civil Rights Department in 2024 report said anti-Hindu hate is just below anti-Semitism. And Islamophobia is way behind it. So we are in a very difficult situation where our legislators have no idea of global issues. They don't understand the actors behind it, and they don't want to pay attention to the harm caused by such legislation. And this is not the first time we have seen it. We saw it in the case of the caste bill that tried to call us castes, oppressors, murderers, rapists. And now they want to add one more adjective, transnational repressors. That's what Hindus are going to be called as. So with that, I want to say, I didn't mention who is behind it. So there are people behind this bill extremely motivated to get the bill passed. They are the ones drafting the bill, consulting with the analysts and the authors to do this bill. And I'm going to say they are what we call Khalistanis. And when we bring it up with the legislators, we say, do you know who the Khalistanis are? Very rarely do we hear somebody say, I think I've read a little bit about them, but feel free to educate me. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Joe, because Joe, you have done some stuff, and you have looked into this particular issue. Your article was fantastic, and I think we would like to hear from your point of view why this is a problem that California really needs to take seriously and act with knowledge, right? So Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Sudha, and good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all. I'll just take a step back to educate you on the Khalistani movement in Canada and how it's permeated through the years. Of course, the Khalistan movement came into prominence in the 1980s, and as a consequence of which, you had the Air India bombing tragedy in which on June 23rd, which strangely enough happens. It's falling tomorrow. It's the 40th anniversary of the Air India bombing tomorrow. So this was about 40 years ago that they came into the scene, but Khalistani gangs took prominence in Canada, predominantly in the West Coast, in British Columbia. So the reason why they came to prominence was because there was a slew of high-profile murders, including that of a Sikh journalist himself who was reporting on the Khalistanis. His name was Tara Singh Hare. And Tara was assassinated by alleged Khalistanis, and till date, he remains the only journalist to have been assassinated on Canadian soil. So the Khalistanis have tried to repress anybody who speaks against them. My co-author himself, the Honorable Ujjal Dosanjh, was a victim of Khalistani attacks. He was brutally attacked in the 80s for speaking out against the Khalistanis, despite being a Sikh himself. So no one is spared, whether you're Sikh, Hindu, or anybody else. You're white. I know I have friends in the media who used to report about them and whose houses were shot up in BC. Kim Bolan is one of them. Of course, Terry Milewski, who was a well-known CBC journalist, still very actively advocating and fighting the Khalistanis. So everybody is being targeted. No one's spared. But just moving on about why it is important in this context nowadays. We live in very dangerous times, especially because of what's happening in the Middle East. And I must tell you, I was in Israel last month for 2 weeks on a work trip. I have after having spent significant time there and having interacted with people from the National Security Council, Mossad, and other people, I have to tell you that the interests of Hindus, Indians at large, are closely intertwined with those of Israel and the Jewish community, right? This is what's happening in the streets in the US, in Canada, or anywhere else in the West. This is not just about Jews or Israelis. These people, these Islamists, these radical Muslims are going to come after everyone. And this is one such bill that, Sudha, you've been talking about in California. And also, as I pointed out in my article, which I'm sure you'll read it later, but I just wanted to bring out some key highlights about how Khalistanis and Islamists coordinate together to target not just India, but also Israel. For example, now, one of the reasons is if you look last month, the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was in Iran. He met with the Ayatollah Khamenei. And after that, the Ayatollah tweeted, you can look up his Twitter account. He tweeted last month about how Pakistan and Iran should work together to destroy Israel. So obviously, there's shared interests about targeting Israel. The Pakistanis are one of the biggest anti-Semites in the world. Then, of course, I'm sure you saw news report from earlier this year about Hamas leaders attending a training camp in Pakistan occupied Kashmir as well. They conducted a rally which it was titled about Kashmir solidarity along with, against the Zionist regime. So you can see the focus is not just about Palestine, but it's also about Kashmir as well. So these are, and then there's more. There is, we got Hezbollah again. Hezbollah has been active in Canada since the 2000s. It's been using Canada as a major hub for its transnational criminal activities, which is very similar to what the Khalistanis do as well. So their major, illicit interests are transnational repression, criminal activities which involve money laundering and drug trafficking, gun smuggling, immigration fraud. All of this is what we know the Khalistanis like to do as well. So Canada is a major hub. Now, I'll point out an example. I think our some of the Canadian friends would know. Last year, when we had the British Columbia provincial elections, the WSO, the World Sikh Organization, wrote a joint statement along with the National Council of Canadian Muslims, which is one of the biggest Muslim Brotherhood front groups here in Canada, about trying to turf out a BC conservative spokesperson because that person he was a Jewish guy. He apparently spoke out against Islamists and so on. So the NCCM is one of the biggest advocates here in Canada about Islamophobia. And so the WSO is is carrying water for the NCCM about turfing this guy because he allegedly is Islamophobic, and also because he picked up a fight with a lady who was on the CBC panel. She's a Sikh, but she's also known to be very supportive of Khalistanis. So he got into a tiff with her, and he cursed her, and both of them exchanged some pretty choiceful words, and so on. So just because of that, you can see that there is a their interests are closely intertwined. The in Canada, the World Sikh Organization of Canada, along with the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Then moving on, about specifically about drugs. Most recently, we had Project Pelican. It was widely reported in the Indian media as well. The Peel police dismantled a major narcotics operation in Toronto area, which most of the people, if you see the suspects who were caught, were all of Punjabi background and allegedly Khalistani sympathizers. The cocaine that was uh, caught with them was about worth $50 million. So, uh, so, and the money for that was also allegedly intended to fund anti-India activities. Now, this is going from what they do here in Canada, which is and in the U.S., which is predominantly protest, referendums, and acquisition of weapons. And the other thing that Khalistanis love to do, which I'm sure it happens frequently in the US as well, is I was speaking to a couple of journalists, friends down in DC. Last year, when there was a significant protest in front of the DC embassy, Indian embassy in DC, and so on, a lot of the people were protesting. I mean, when this particular journalist was going to interview them, they refused to identify themselves and they had their faces covered. And when she asked one of the girls who was protesting, she said that she was paid to do this. So, to this, I'm sure is common knowledge to most of you on the call, but to hear that from the journalist was pretty interesting. But this is not reported in the mainstream media. And also, because like I said earlier to my point about the Iranians and the Pakistanis, you must understand that this is this has nothing to do with Shia, Sunni, and so on. Every radical Islamist has, if they have a hard on for Israel, then that means they also have a problem with India. Invariably, that's a given. So last year, a couple of years ago, we had a major trial of a disgraced RCMP officer named Cameron Ortiz. Now, Cameron was allegedly selling intelligence. He was a director of the Intelligence Bureau at the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is the equivalent of the Canadian equivalent of the FBI. So the RCMP, so he was selling intelligence to a Pakistani guy named Altaf Khanani. Now, Altaf was based in Dubai, and he was the money mover for Hezbollah and Al Qaeda. He was the central figure in their global operations and for terror financing. One of his associates was Harmohan Singh Akim Zada. This guy, Harmohan, was a powerful Dubai-based heroin trafficker and money launderer who has been accused of, I mean, his family has been accused by Indian officials of financing Khalistani terror groups. And then last year, in BC, we had Canada's largest ever drug bust. It was nearly worth $500 million in the middle of nowhere. And the only person they got was a 20-something-year-old Punjabi kid. Are you telling me that this is some kind of a Breaking Bad operation where this is just one kid running a nearly $500 million operation? So, and that operations, by the way, had links to Hezbollah. So again, you can see that where there are, Islamist terror groups involved, there is also Khalistani involvement as well. We had Arshdeep Singh Gill, who was one of India's most wanted terrorists. India has been asking Canada to extradite him for years together. Last November, he was arrested in Milton, Ontario, after a gunfight. So, and Arshdeep Singh Gill was linked to the Lashkar-e-Toiba. He was heavily linked to Lashkar-e-Toiba. As you know, LET was the terror group behind the Mumbai terror attacks. And also, fun fact, if you I'm sure you remember the name Major Iqbal. He was one of the top ISI officials who masterminded the Mumbai terror attacks. Now, Major Iqbal himself handpicked. If you remember, one of the targets in the attack was a Jewish center, and where the rabbi and his wife were murdered. So the Major Iqbal had targeted that particular Jewish synagogue because he thought that that was a Mossad front. So clearly, you can see now that I've given you multiple examples of how what's happening in the world today in the Middle East is also as Indian interests closely intertwined. What affects the Middle East, or rather Israel, affects India. And it's not just the Khalistanis. Yes, the Khalistanis are a major problem, but from my research, and because that is my primary focus of research, it's the Islamists that's going to be our biggest problem, the Muslim Brotherhood. They are moving fast and really stealthily, trying to push through bills like the one you have in California. They're trying to push bills here in Canada as well to try and legitimize Islamophobia so that nobody can talk about radical Islam. They are slowly trying to move their own agenda about legitimizing Palestine and talking about Islamic education and so on in our schools and colleges as well.
We lost your voice, Joe.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. So there's a lot of activity happening across North America as far as the Muslim Brotherhood and the Khalistanis are concerned, because their interests are mutually intertwined. The Muslim Brotherhood wants to take over the West. They have, like China, Russia, they have a 100-year plan to take over US. It is there. If you don't believe me, read the 1991 memorandum that of the Muslim Brotherhood. It was part of the. It was presented as evidence as part of the Holy Land Foundation trial in the U.S. in 2011. If you remember, that was the biggest terror financing trial in American history. So that was a document worth reading. You can see what the Muslim Brotherhood's agenda is in that to take over America, or I mean North America for that matter.
So,
With
Joe, I
that,
have a question. I have a question for you. In your article, you talk about national security and public safety
correct.
concerns. Can you address that a little bit? I know you gave a lot of different things going on, but from a national security, some of them are Canadian citizens, but many of them may not be. Some of them might be asylum seekers. And so I'm just wanting to hear from you when you wrote about the national security and the public safety, how does
See,
that?
because the political parties in Canada have I mean this problem where predominantly because it's a white people problem where they can't seem to discern or distinguish between Khalistanis and Sikhs. For them, it's like because all Khalistanis come from the Sikh community, so hence all Sikhs are Khalistani. So they operate um, on that flawed theory. So and I say this as somebody who worked in politics. I was outreach advisor and press secretary to Pierre Poilievre, our Conservative Party leader. So I have seen this up and close. So um, it's something that is, like I said, this has been happening for the through the decades. No party wants to make any change about it, and as a consequence of which, it is affecting Canadian policies on immigration, on national security matters. Uh, at least under the Trudeau government, if I'm sure my Canadian friends on the call would remember, during the last CSIS report, the Trudeau government refused to call out Khalistani extremism. He refused to name them as Khalistanis. So he just refused. He referred to it as Sikh extremism. But the report that came out earlier this week, the CSIS report, specifically called out Khalistanis as being a problem in Canada, that there is a small group of Khalistanis who are inherently violent and who are fundraising activities in Canada to carry out any kind of terror activities in India and elsewhere. So it's good to see some positive changes in that context under this new Mark Carney government, but there is still a lot to be done. I don't think we would come to a point where we would see the Khalistan movement being designated as a terror organization. Um, but they are problematic in terms of, at least from anecdotal evidences that what I've come across, the immigration is one of the ways that they are trying to make them move in Canada. Very similar to how the Islamists use immigration to forward their agenda. So you're seeing the Khalistanis do that as well, which is why you're seeing a lot of these students also student protests as well. And most of the student protests in Canada are predominantly from the Punjabi community. So, yes, so you are going to see that play out. There are instances of, again, because of a lax drug laws, and to your question as well, Sudha, about public safety. As you know, the Trudeau government, when it was in power, it had pushed through some very liberal drug laws. In fact, Canada is one of the most liberal drug laws in the world. So you are seeing Khalistanis really, having been uh, perpetuating the drug trade on account of these drug laws. You're seeing most of the drug seizures in Canada, even across the border, the US border. Most of the truck drivers being arrested are Punjabis. Most of the people arrested on streets in Ontario or BC are Punjabis. So this goes to show that they are definitely weaponizing immigration, which is undermining public safety and national security.
Thank you. I'm going to have Rishabh speak a little bit to it too, because there was a Peel policeman issue last year. So if law enforcement themselves are part of the problem, can you hear?
Yes, I can.
I can
Yes, I
hear
can,
you.
Sudhaji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If law enforcement itself is a problem, then this bill is a very serious issue for California. It is actually going to train law enforcement on transnational repression. And we have asked many times, who will do the training? No answer. So because we are not part of this the process of legislation going on, we feel like we could see some very bad outcomes from this bill with, let's say, SALDEF, the Sikh organizations training these folks. So with that, Rishabh, I want to ask you for your point of view on what Joe was talking about, because you, I think, have been on the front line and you personally have faced serious threats.
Yes, Sudhaji, and you rightly pointed out that first harm of all such bills comes from non-state actors taking charge in educating the state agencies about what should be done and what should not be, and there is no mechanism to see if what interests those are being used at and how they are going to harm everyone. And as we have seen in the case of Khalistanis harming Hindu community, which has been so evident that they have been attacking Hindu temples in Canada relentlessly. There has been more than 24 temple attacks in Canada in last 3 years. And in majority of them, the repeated attack, the nature of attack has been such that it is brazen and it is Hindu phobic in nature. And the second, then they do it with impunity and do it over and over again. They announce it beforehand. They do it day after market it that we have done it. So this is another way of intimidation tactics we have seen in Khalistanis using over and over. As Joe was very eloquently giving so many evidences of these nexuses and how they operate. One of the things Joe mentioned was that how they threaten the journalists and the people in the power. So this is very common threat that when they found brown people, they physically attack them or threaten them. And to the institutions and white people and the people in the power, they use the legal route. That has been the mechanism so far, what we have seen in last 40, 50 years. So, so much so that, as Joe just mentioned, that Ujjwal Dosanjh is not just author of the article with Joe. He is the ex-premier of one of the province of Canada. To be so brazen to attack and beat Black and Blue, an ex-premier, and firing shots at one of the journalists' house, Kim Bolan's house. She stopped writing about Khalistanis since then and moved on to work on the drug and excesses and all that. Terry Milewski has been in his house and doesn't go out in any of the panels for the same reason. Balraj Deol has been in the similar situation. He has been threatened. Samir Kaushal is another journalist who has been beaten at one point for just reporting. There is a list. I think we on the Twitter we have our CoHNA Canada Twitter we have so many times put the list of the journalists they have threatened and put them out. So much so that the infiltration is in the system so much that when the attack happened on the in the Brampton in last November on the Hindu community members, a medieval style invasion and attack, then the same day when the police came to protect Hindus, there were police officers who were involved before we found out through the videos that the same policemen were involved in the protest itself. So, and the investigation is now going on in the Peel police, and this is taking its time. But the same thing we saw in the Surrey after the attack was happened here. Instead of arresting the Khalistanis, the police actually arrested young teenagers of Hindu families. So tie it all back together. I mean, what does it sound like? Transnational repression sounds like, okay, authoritarian governments might be targeting some dissidents abroad. So it sounds good. What is the harm in that? But what do we see happening is right in front of it. In Canada, this bill is legislated and is going to be a law soon from the federal government. And there is a growing blind spot which has been systematically negligized. They refuse to acknowledge it, that non-state extremists are using liberal democracies as safe havens, and they are promoting their hatred. They are avoiding justice system, and they are suppressing diaspora voices, especially the ones who are talking about the Hindu phobia. So this is the main point. This is not just as Joe was talking about. This is the geopolitical issue: Iran, India, Israel, Canada, USA. What does it have to do with the ordinary Canadian Hindu and American? But this is directly affecting, because these are the actors who are criminalized in the country of their origin for killing Hindus, for doing these crimes, and they are coming here with the same hatred, and they are doing these attacks of our temples. There is a history of the terror attack, not in India. Imagine, Air India bombing is still known, even though Canadian public and in the media and the popular belief refuses to acknowledge it, but it is a Canadian tragedy. The people who died were Canadian. So it directly affects us. It is affecting me. I have been at the center of the attack. My family has been gone through a really tough time through going through this, designated terrorists calling out my name in the open and trying to intimidate me in any way they can. So it's not about that, criminals are fleeing India and they are being as a fugitive, and they might be doing terrorism in India and murders in India. The same people wear the garbs of human rights advocates and come in front of us and intimidate our children, in some cases there have been cases where there have been attacks in the schools, in the colleges, but also on women. There are some derogatory words which are used against Hindu women, which Khalistanis have been targeting. I know Joe has done a lot of research, but I'm talking about anecdotal evidences, but I'm very sure this will come out soon after if we do more of the research, because NCRI did their research 2 years back. There is still a lot of data since then which has gone up. So Canada becoming a shield is a story which California should be very aware of and need to look at the path of Canada, that where Canada has gone wrong, they should not go there. One more point, Joe raised, which was very important, was about bigotry of low expectations on behalf of our legislators. They thinking that all Sikh are Khalistanis. What is happening is, because of this radicalization happening, Hindus and moderate Sikhs both are at the attack and at the center of the persecution by these criminal networks who get their money from the drug networks and use that for their quote-unquote human rights activism, and which activism is centered around not just freedom of speech, but actually at direct harm, tangible harm to Hindu community.
My God, it's a scary proposition. And if this, it sounds like the TNR is going to be a law in Canada. It could be a law in California. Instead of protecting citizens and residents who are law-abiding, these laws actually give sanctuary to the perpetrators of really serious violence.
One more point, just once we are talking about it, it's just that, drug networks spreading is not just issue for state. It is a Hindu issue as well. I mean, who wants a $500 million super lab in their province? I don't want that, because I don't want youth to be affected. I want them to be spiritually, moving up in the direction. Imagine the scale of a super lab with reactors. We are talking about a lab which is bigger than a lab in your closest university. And state actors saying that we don't even know who's running that. Make it make sense. And the same actors now legitimizing this transnational repression to save them instead of actually penalizing them. So you need to understand that when security experts like Joe Adam George are actually giving you warning that this is danger, we need to understand that this is very dangerous for the future of Hindus and future of any citizen in US and Canada.
I think it's more than the Hindu problem. It is actually a problem for all people of the country who want to just live a normal life. I'm just going to give Ashwin a chance to speak up as a young American. Ashwin, what do you think this law, this bill, once it becomes law, how it's going to affect us in California and elsewhere in the US if it catches on?
Namaste, all. My name is Ashwin. I am the managing director for CoHNA's Youth Action Network. We work with college campuses to talk about Hindu phobia and human rights violations against our community. I was not born in California, but I was raised here. I've lived here for like 10 plus years now, so I guess I can call myself a Californian now. And one of the things that you see a lot, and this is when we're talking with legislators and other elected officials, is that they don't quite understand the complexities of our community. So they look at us as one giant, blob, and they can't really tell the difference. Who's a Hindu, who's a Sikh, what are these problems? And I think because of that, it's kind of a smokescreen for bad faith actors to come in and say, well, this is not going to affect you. It's not going to affect the Hindu community. It's just for, preventing bad governments. And so they bring up, all these other groups, the Chinese government, the Cambodian government, the Iranian government, to kind of, once again, muddle who exactly is sponsoring this bill, what are their motivations, and why are they pushing this bill so hard? It's very clear from what Joe and Rishabhji have talked about that this is a group of Khalistanis, extremists, who have an axe to grind against the Indian and the Hindu community, and who want to use this law against us. Now, what does that mean on a day-to-day basis, right? Many Americans might say, well, Canada has its own issues, right? I don't see this in my community in America. Well, we know for a fact that there have been many, many Hindu temples attacked by Khalistanis. The response from law enforcement, from elected officials, has been that they don't know enough information, they don't have enough evidence, they can't do anything, they can't prevent anything, and so essentially nothing has been done. In that, given that all this has happened, imagine that tomorrow this bill is passed and someone comes to you, one of these Khalistanis, may be affiliated with a criminal organization, may not be, and says, hey, I am the victim of transnational repression by XYZ. Could be someone in the tech sector, could be someone who's a tech worker, right? Maybe the CEO is not going to get it, but many of us who work in that industry, they'll be able to put together this story. Oh, okay, I read a story about transnational repression. The Indian government is going after Sikhs, right? They'll say Sikhs, not Khalistanis, obviously. And then this person who is a Hindu is associated with the Indian government. They must have ties to the Indian government. The Indian government is doing this. Hey, they passed a law. Clearly, why would the California government pass a law if it wasn't a real issue, if it wasn't a real threat? And you're going to have to, the onus of evidence, right? The burden of proof is going to be on me. Right? This is exactly what we saw with SB 403, where the state of California was essentially telling Hindus how to identify, telling Indians, oh, you're this, you're that. It's very difficult. It's not like, you go to court and you have two lawyers and two people argue in front of a judge. That's different because those two groups are equals. But in this case, it's the state of California who is accusing you. You can't It's very hard to do that. I mean, there are some people with a lot of money who can hire a lawyer and do all kinds of things, but this is the reality of how it's going to work. A police officer stops you. They have got training from Khalistani groups to say, hey, Indians and Hindus are a threat. They may be agents of the Indian government. How do you deal with that? If a police officer says, hey, I've read about you guys, I know that you guys are working for the Indian government, there's nothing we can do. You can get arrested, you can get detained. They may, in the end, it may work out, but you know what? You are going to still have to hire the lawyer. You're still going to have to fight against the state. You might be free, and the case will still be pending against you. And not to mention, the idea of, hey, I should be able to live with dignity in my own community. Now, all of a sudden, in the court of public opinion, you are not just, friendly neighborhood community member. You are, someone working for the Indian government, which sounds ridiculous. I mean, all of this, and we talk about this with the seriousness it deserves, but you feel like you're going a little crazy. You feel like, okay, how do I explain to someone who knows nothing about our culture, knows nothing about these dynamics? How do I explain to them this is absolutely crazy? And so you end up in this situation where, you're alone in your place where you live and where you have friends and family, and suddenly you're not part of the community, you're other. You can pay taxes, you can be a citizen, you can be the most law-abiding person in the world, but if the state accuses you of something, you're not going to have any recourse. And that's what we're trying to prevent here. That's how it's
Yeah.
going to affect us, the individual.
Yes, so I'm just going to ask everybody who's in the audience, please click those email links, send a message, do the calls. It's not waste of time. Your life depends on it. Please do it. Your children's lives depend on it. Please do it this week. With that, I'm going to ask Joe. Joe, what do you think? How do we educate the Canadian community, American community, the lawmakers? They are not Indian. They don't, like Ashwin said, they can't recognize a Hindu from a Sikh, from a Jew, from a Jain or a Buddhist. They don't know. So what do you say?
I think it's distinct a little from in vis-a-vis. I think there are enough lawmakers of Indian origin, at least here in Canada, who make that distinction, but they choose not to because especially in Canada, we are much more left-leaning than the U.S. So in an environment where there's political correctness, the woke culture, so on, and also with identity politics being so strong here in Canada, nobody wants to, take the step of coming out and explaining, articulating it to the party leaders that we need. This is who we are. Because, for example, the Conservative Party deputy leader, Tim Uppal, is himself one known to have Khalistani links. So when you have the deputy leader of the opposition party, the Conservative Party, himself kowtowing with Khalistanis, where are you who's the party leader going to listen to? It's unfortunate predicament. So I do not have an answer to it, but then to what Ashwin said, I think this point in time is to try educate, mobilize people, because that's what our enemies are doing. They're doing a good job at mobilizing people. If you see the open letters that these radical Muslim groups put together, you would see at least 200 to 300 signatories on the letter. I'd be honest with you, Sudha and everybody else. I haven't seen this kind of unity in any community. Forget Hindus. I haven't seen it amongst Christians, Jews, anybody. Everybody is divided. Everybody wants a pound of flesh. Everybody wants, if you try to put together an event, everybody wants to be on the podium, wants to get a few minutes to speak. But these radical Islamists, they don't care about that. They are funding, they are pushing things stealthily, um, and they're making themselves very powerful. There was the Muslim Brotherhood together a political action committee in the last Canadian election involving around 100 to 200 Muslim groups across Canada. And what was their agenda? Palestine. Only Palestine. Nothing about making Canada better. No. If you, they only wanted to support those candidates who supported the Palestine issue. So, what are we going to do any different? How are we going to work together? Try and mobilize people. Speak to our MPs, and I mean, down there in the States, of course, your legislators and so on, and make it a point. Show them the evidence, tell them that this is what it is, and then also make it what I've understood is. Don't, rather than making it about ourselves, also let them know that this problem is eventually going to come after them as well, that it is not just when Islamists blow things up in India, they're not going to care whether you voted or not for Modi. They're going to kill you nonetheless. So they don't care whether you're Muslim or not. They're still going to kill you. So the point is, make it articulate to our leaders that this problem is a national security problem. It is not a Hindu problem, like Rishabh said. It's not a Hindu problem. It's not a Muslim or Christian or whatever Jewish problem. It's a national security problem. It's a cultural. It's a Western civilization problem. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is what the message should be to everyone listening. This is a national security problem. It's a public safety problem. We don't want terrorists coddled because it can come back and bite the ones that are coddling them, our legislators themselves. And by the time it'll be too late, that is a worry we have. Just to let you know, this bill is written so cleanly, cleverly. Um, and when we go and talk to our elected officials, they'll say, "This is what they said. If this bill comes to me today in the version I'm seeing, I will vote for it because it's a good bill." And our AAPI leaders say, "I want China to not come after me, and this bill stops it." They don't see they don't see who's behind it, and that has been the most frustrating thing for us. How do we peel the onion and say, you need to see what is behind it, right? Well, all we can do is keep talking, and maybe using in some of our committee leaders meetings with the legislators, we've been bringing some of the Canadians in, you know, to speak about what you are seeing there, so these folks can understand the bill is not just a bill, it has serious underlying issues behind it. Anyway, let me go to some of the questions. I think I'm looking at, well, one question is Canadian and Americans need to organize and percolate. Actually, it's more than Hindus. I think we should be talking to a lot of our neighbors, American in Canada, to Canadians, ordinary everyday Americans, and Canadians, and to explain to them who these people are, what is happening, what is at stake for them. It'll be a long time before we do that. And uh, I don't know, Rishabh, if you have any thoughts on it, how we need to organize, percolate into political parties and governance.
Yeah, this is a long process and we can keep doing it. But, first immediate need is to educate the legislators about the harms of it. And, maybe talk to them in the context maybe they can understand. And maybe tell them if they understand about the issues of ISIS or the crimes ISIS has done against humanity. Maybe, would you like an ISIS fighter to be a human rights activist in California, come here, and transnational repression used to actually protect them from being prosecuted in their homeland. So it doesn't make sense to me. Crime doesn't just suddenly disappear because you cross the borders, and your ideologies based on the imperial motives on some nation don't become good or bad. But that's what we see here happening. So the underlying underlying assumption or underlying message of these bills here is that imperial repression is good, but when maybe global south is trying to control the crimes against their citizens or Hindus or maybe Africans or other indigenous communities all across the world, then that is they are not allowed to do so, and they can come to Canada and USA and they can advance their hateful ideologies and continue harming the indigenous communities across the world. That's not right.
Yeah. There's another question about police. Well, I want to say that let's not blame everything on the police and the legislators. We haven't done our job. It's only when these bills come up, we all get fired up and we go talk to them. The idea is to be constantly engaged. That's called civic engagement. You have to be engaged all the time in your city, with your city councilors, your mayors, your state legislatures, every day or every week. Go to your local assemblyman's local office, have coffee with the staffers, talk about these things. And if you say I'm too busy, everybody is busy, but this actually is going to stop you from being that busy. You may not even have a job at one point if these kinds of labels are put on all of us. That's the kind of danger we are in. So I'm going to say we are working with the police departments, and they don't know anything about Hindus. When we reach out, they are happy to talk to us. My concern is this training. So we're going to, one thing I want to tell this committee is we are going to be fighting. We are not stopping the fight. We will take it to any point, and whether we win or lose, because at this point, the way it's going, we have nothing to lose. So we are taking the fight on very seriously. I'd like to ask everyone to join us in that particular fight as well. I don't think there are any other questions, or if I'm missing anything. There's one thing about Dallas. Yeah, there's a lot of problems going on. Indian.
I can add one more point here,
Yeah,
Sudhaji.
yeah.
If even after you're explaining, your legislator doesn't understand, then the red flag is that if your legislators are not ready to expand the legal definition of the bill, and they are not ready to ensure that these fugitives are not going to harm your community, then it is a problem. So, and what can be more red flag? If it was so transparent, then why are they not open to expand the legal definitions of it and ensure the community that they are not going to used against the community which we are concerned about?
Very good point. So one other commitment I want to make to the communities, we do have with Hindu American Foundation and CoHNA, we do have those amendments, very reasonable amendments. We are going to do our best to see if the assembly will consider adding those amendments into the bill that eventually they might pass. We would like to see it killed in committee. Chances are very low, but we are going to be pushing for all of that. It was always like, what's the harm, right? With the caste bill, it was like, oh, what's the harm? Isn't it a good thing to stop caste discrimination? Of course it is. But not if the state is coming after me to discriminate against me. The same thing here. Why is this bill needed? We asked in some of the members, and they said it'll help with better reporting. Really, you get threats on the phone, and you can't call the police and make a report? Without this bill? I don't understand. Most of this is about phone calls to people from all over the world, right? Threatening, serious harm. Make police reports or call the FBI and say, these are the numbers. It shows up on your phone. Why do you need this bill? No answer. So anyway, we are at time. And Joe, I really want to thank you. I've read your article. I'm going to send it to the committee members and assembly members. And if we do have an opportunity with a senior committee member that we can bring you on and have you explain the national security and the public safety issues, I think hearing from someone, other than CoHNA, someone who has real credibility as a journalist and an analyst and researcher, that might make a difference. So we may be calling on you for that.
Sudhaji, one quick question. There was an ask for, is there a shareable link with these numbers so we can share within our groups?
Actually, it is in all of the WhatsApp groups. I mean, there is no link. Sorry, there is no link. Yeah, you can actually go to I'll tell you. I didn't pull up the link. The link is on, California Assembly Emergency Management Committee members. That link, it'll give you all those numbers. We
And
also
maybe we can add that to the website or something, some
We can
action.
do that.
Yeah.
Yes, we can do that.
California
I think we have done
Assembly-
this here as well in the chat. If you will see, we have put the numbers of all the chairs and
I think they
vice
want
chairs.
a link. They want a link. So the link
If
is
they will-
California Assembly Emergency
Yeah.
Management Committee members, and then it'll bring
Yeah.
up a link. Yeah.
I think
So-
we can send an email with all these information to all the California
Everybody
residents around.
registered. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be good. Yeah. Thank you. I'm trying to see, did I ignore anyone or, about, actually, Congressman Khanna was the one who is part of the group of Indian American Congress members who reached out to DOJ. Nabina, I would ask you, follow up with Ro Khanna's office and say, what have you heard from the DOJ? See, this kind of an ongoing touch point has to be there. Otherwise, there is no movement forward. So you need to ask Congressman Khanna, what has happened? Has the DOJ provided something? And can you share that with us? What action should we as a constituent take? And does CoHNA have a video in Hindi? No, everything is in English because what we do is for the Indian American and Indian Canadians. So our audience is North America. So that's why we speak that. And a very good point about non-speaking Sikhs. That's a big challenge. I've been talking to the Sikh community. They also said there are people who are coming and testifying in the committees. They don't know anything about this bill. They're just told, go do this. And they come up and say, I am Jakara, I support the bill. I am Sikhs for Justice, I support the bill. I am something. And they can't speak a lot of English. They'll just say, my name is this, and I support the bill. So it is a problem. We should, there's Punjabi radio. I don't think they will allow CoHNA to come on Punjabi radio in California, let me
No,
tell you.
in Canada we do. In some of them, you can try. You never know. But
we
yeah.
can try. We can say, hey, you need to give equal opportunity. Can we talk?
Yes.
Yeah. We will try. But right now, I know, I understand. Okay, sign up petitions. Yes. I think that's basically it. So, Joe, thank you very much. Look forward to your future work. And very much, appreciated your conversation today.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Thank you, everybody, Rishabh, Ashwin, and everybody else on the call. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone who's joined us. And we will put out this recording and links, etc. Thank you. All right. Have a good afternoon. Thank you very much.